Our reading this morning is from Uriah Mountain Dreamer, The Invitation. It doesn't interest me what you do for a living. I want to know what you ache for, and if you dare to dream of meeting your heart's longing. It doesn't interest me how old you are. I want to know if you will risk looking like a fool for love, for your dream, for the adventure of being alive. It doesn't interest me what planets are squaring your moon. I want to know if you have touched the center of your own sorrow, and if you have been opened by life's betrayals, or have become shriveled and closed for fear of further pain. I want to know if you can sit with pain, mine or your own, without moving to hide it, or fix it, or fade it. I want to know if you can be with joy, mine or your own. If you can dance with wildness and let the ecstasy fill you to the tips of your fingers and toes without cautioning us to be careful, to be realistic, to remember the limitations of being human. It doesn't interest me if the story you are telling me is true. I want to know if you can disappoint another to be true to yourself. If you can bear the accusation of betrayal and not betray your own soul. If you can be faithless and therefore trustworthy. I want to know if you can see beauty even when it is not pretty every day. And if you can source your own life from its presence. I want to know if you can live with failure, yours and mine, and still stand at the edge of the lake and shout to the silver of the full moon, yes. It doesn't interest me to know where you live or how much money you have. I want to know if you can get up after the night of grief and despair, weary and bruised to the bone, and do what needs to be done to feed the children. It doesn't interest me to know who or how you came to be here. I want to know if you stand in the center of the fire with me and not shrink back. It doesn't interest me where or what or with whom you have studied. I want to know what sustains you from the inside when all else falls away. I want to know if you can be alone with yourself, and if you truly like the company you keep in the empty moments. It's good to be with you all this morning. My feet hurt. A few weeks ago, Community Unitarian Universalist Church, where I currently serve, and Westside Unitarian Universalist Congregation, my home congregation in Seattle, jointly ordained me into Unitarian Universalist ministry. Newly wearing a stole. Thank you. I am now Reverend Crystal Zerfos. Thank you. The ordination ceremony on March 16th was filled with moving words and beautiful music. There were several clergy who participated and several more who gathered to witness and affirm these two congregations ordaining me. There was intricate sacred ritual and many tears were shed. And for me, there was a lot of standing in dress shoes for hours, and my feet hurt still. But I'll let you in on a little secret, though. My feet hurt long before that blessed day. Actually, my feet have been hurting in one way or another for the past 23 years. That's how long I've been moving toward ordained ministry, following this call to preach the word of truth in freedom, to minister to joys and sorrows alike, to work for justice and peace, to serve, and to love. My journey to get where I am today has been long and winding, with several rough spots, many calm, peaceful sections, at times a sense of urgency, and at other times a leisurely, I don't know if I'm really ready for that pace. The best way to describe my journey is moving along a river. I loved the story you shared. It fits so perfectly. I want to share a little bit of my call to ministry with you this morning. When I was 18 years old and preparing to graduate from high school, my minister at the time, Reverend Harold Ewell, a Lutheran minister, called me into his office one day and asked me if I had ever considered going into the ministry. I knew enough at 18 not to laugh at him, but I didn't hesitate to tell him that I already knew what I was going to do. I was going to get my psychology degree and eventually become a psychologist. I believed I already knew the course my life would take. That was the path I could envision before me at that moment in time. Little did I know that that conversation with Pastor Ewell planted a seed, and my river would flow down a different channel that I couldn't yet perceive. When I went off to college, my campus ministers watered and nurtured that seed. They listened and asked me questions, prayed with and for me. They fielded my many questions and gently, pastorally listened when I ranted or cried, or when I was simply obstinate and needed someone to witness that. And then I came out. A process that began in my early childhood, but which was put on hold because of homophobia and learned self-loathing. For 2 years, I wrestled with not only reconciling these two seemingly opposing identities, Christian and lesbian, but I also wrestled with my calling and the church's discriminatory policies at that time. The Lutheran Church would change a decade later. Now, I pause to ask you, what do you do when you hit a wall? When the rocks in your river get in the way and you crash into them and get hurt? Do you eddy out and take a break, maybe regroup? Check your vessel for damage? Maybe you figure out how to maneuver around the rocks, through the rapids. Take care of your basic needs, rely on your compass, and then press on. Or perhaps you choose to give up altogether. In my early 20s, I came to what felt like a dam in the river, and everything that was flowing before that suddenly grinded to a halt, crashing into this wall I found in front of me in the river. Water continued to seep out slowly from the bottom, but I was afraid I'd drown trying to follow that route. So I decided to leave the river. I pulled my vessel from the water and I cried on the shore. At 22, I made the decision to abandon, at least that's what it felt like at the time, to abandon my call to ministry and go another direction. That's what I thought exiting the river meant. It was one of the most painful decisions of my young life. It was mere months before graduation, and I didn't know what I'd do or where I'd go. I only knew that I could not pursue my seminary education and ordained ministry at that time. So I wandered in the forest. It took me several years until I got back to that same river of called ministry. And when I found the river again, it was quite different because I was in another section of it, a different tributary, and one that felt quite right. After immersing myself in the water, I knew for certain that was the right path for me. As it turns out, I hadn't fully abandoned the river altogether. I merely portaged around for more than a decade. All that time in the forest, I wondered if I was still being called and if I had done the right thing by leaving the river. I joined the Lutheran Volunteer Corps after college and worked at a homeless shelter in Tacoma, Washington. That's what brought me to the West Coast. I would end up spending 3 years there before moving on to other nonprofit positions throughout Puget Sound. I ultimately spent years working with folks on the streets, low-income women, domestic violence survivors, and people struggling with addiction and mental illness. I was blessed to meet so many beautiful, loving, brilliant, and deeply spiritual people during this time. Folks who were far more educated than I, now struggling to find food as their drug addiction had devastated their livelihoods. Married people who were so devoted to their spouses and children that they endured horrific abuse for years out of love for others. Strong, determined women defying the odds and working harder than anyone I'd ever known. And you all don't know this about me, but I come from a family of farmers. These women worked so hard to establish themselves in the workplace and provide for their families. And all of the lessons I learned during these years of service, all of the people who taught me, all of the love I received, all of the love I imparted, it was some of the best ministry. Those skills I learned earlier navigating that one section of difficult water helped prepare me for the challenging moments I experienced in the forest. And like I said before, eventually I found my way back to this river of called ministry. And upon touching that water again, I knew it was the right path for me. Now, after several years of study and ministerial work, I stand here on my tired, hurting feet, knowing that I'm right where I'm supposed to be. It's called a calling for a reason. Some folks feel called by a divine being, by God, by the universe, this tug from a force beyond our human understanding. Some people know deep in their gut that something is right for them. And still others trust in fate or coincidence. Whatever propels you forward into the water that brings out your best self, makes you feel the most alive and like you're right where you're supposed to be, doing what you're supposed to be doing. Trust that. Do that. Go that way. That's answering your calling. Mine happens to be ministry. Yours may be teaching, parenting, engineering, serving, coordinating, managing, creating, researching, discovering, fixing, preparing, feeding, stewarding. Frederick Buechner said, "Your vocation in life is where your greatest joy meets the world's greatest need." And in the Japanese concept of ikigai, there are 4 intersections that converge to reveal your reason for being. Imagine with me a Venn diagram with 4 circles. These circles are that which you love, that which you're good at, that which the world needs, and that for which you can be paid. Now, getting paid does not necessarily mean financial compensation, though that is a piece of it, which I know is why you're laughing. It also refers to that which feeds and sustains you. And the intersection of these 4 circles is called your ikigai. For reference, the place where what you love and what the world needs, that's your mission. Where what you love and what you're good at, that's your passion. What you're good at and what you can be paid for is your profession, and what you can be paid for and what the world needs is your vocation. But where all four of these converge in the center, that is your ikigai, your reason for being. What you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. Where do you find yourself in that diagram? Are you in the center? Have you ever been in the center and maybe you are no longer? What might change so you can locate yourself there? And if you are there, if you're right there in the ikigai, what sustains you and helps keep you fully present? Now that I'm an ordained Unitarian Universalist minister, the river doesn't suddenly end. It keeps flowing. I continue following my calling. I have to do most of the same things. Check in to see if I'm still headed in the right direction for me. Ensure that I'm well equipped and my vessel is maintained. Learn new skills for the technical sections of the river. Check my compass regularly to stay on track. And regroup, reassess, and make the necessary changes if I feel lost or get confused. We all need to do this throughout our lives. Check in with ourselves. Stop, breathe, and listen. And at times, we need to rest our weary feet. I can tell you that for me, there have been days when I felt deep within that I knew that this is what I was called to do in my life. There were also times I questioned this. In fact, for years, I went back and forth, sometimes second-guessing myself. Who am I to be a minister, to be a teacher, to be a leader? And there have been days, weeks, months, when I confidently knew deep in my soul that I am called to ministry and this is the right path for me. I have found my ikigai. Have you had this experience? Have you ever felt called to a vocation, to a profession, a field of study, or maybe a specific role? Maybe you've felt compelled to become a parent, to move to a particular location, to lean into a feeling or a sensation. What does that call feel like in you? How does it manifest in your body, in your mind, in your spirit? I know for me, early on, I wanted to hear the actual word of God speaking to me. I wanted to see a burning bush and hear, see, taste, touch, smell the voice telling me that I had gotten it right. I wanted definitive proof, divine confirmation, if you will, that took away any doubt that this was the right direction for me, and that I wasn't simply following something I wanted, that it wasn't my ego leading me. Deep down underneath all of that, I wanted assurance that I could actually speak with and receive directly from the sacred, the source of life. And I went back and forth for years because I figured that I needed to know for sure, 100% for certain, no more questions, no more doubt. Because what if I was wrong? Hindsight gives the perspective to recognize all of the side paths I took, each stop I made to question and to doubt. All of the people I met along the journey have helped me truly answer this call, firmly, committedly, with integrity, in faith, with an appropriate amount of certainty and uncertainty, with a healthy helping of confidence and moments of hesitation. I know I'm right where I'm supposed to be, doing what I'm supposed to do. And after 23 years of discernment, hard work, tears, and much joy, my feet hurt. Where is your ikigai? Are you where you're supposed to be? Remember that only you can answer that. Others can affirm it, but only you know your own truth. If you're not there yet, are you moving in that direction? And if not, what's in your way? How do you clear the path? How do you navigate toward your goal, moving with the water, flowing where you're meant to go? And for those of you who know you're on the right path, will you keep going? When you find that the path makes you feel like everything is aligned and this is so right that you cannot not do it, when you stand at the edge of the lake and shout to the silver of the full moon, yes, go that way. I said yes several times in the past 23 years. And here I am today. Your call, that nudge, the nagging feeling that won't go away, the urge to move, the pull to change, however your calling manifests, go that way. And for those of us who walk, your feet may hurt. For those who roll, your arms might get tired. You may stumble on the obstacles in your path. But truly, I tell you, friends, the more you understand and lean into your purpose for being alive, when you flow with the river and trust your inner guide, you will find how beautiful it is to reside in your own ikigai. Will you go? Amen, and blessed be.